welcome to a Summer Abroad series in which we interview professors of 2025 Summer Abroad programs. Today I'm here with Professor Padraic Scanlan, and so I would love to know just a little bit more about your professional and academic background and what really inspired you to pursue your current path and lead a historical studies program in England.
Right. So I'm an historian. I'm trained as an historian. I teach, as you said, in the Center for Industrial Relations and Human Resources here at the University of Toronto. So I'm an expert on the history of labor in Britain and the British Empire in the 18th and 19th centuries. I started my career, I wrote two books about British anti-slavery and the end of the slave trade, and then the end of plantation slavery in the British Empire and the transition to free labor. And I've also written a book about agricultural and industrial labor in Ireland in the era of the Irish potato famine. And so, in industrial relations, I teach courses on writing. I teach courses on labor studies. I don't really get as many opportunities to teach from within my area of expertise as maybe some of my colleagues do. So I'm really excited to be able to teach a course that is very much in my wheelhouse on the history of work and on the relationship between industrial work and the working world that we all live in today.
That's awesome. It sounds super interesting. So now talking a bit more about the course, what would you say some of the highlights of the course in terms of the field trips it offers?
So I've tried to kind of separate the course into different parts to kind of break down the relationship between the transformation of the British economy and the transformation of the global economy in the 19th century, and the relationship of those changes on the lives of working people and on the kind of structure of people's working day. And so the trips that are associated with the course try to tie into some of those themes. So one of the kind of first parts of the course is on political economy and on ideas about work ethic and labor and wages. And associated with that part of the course, we'll go into London, my favorite city in the world, like one of the most like glamorous and spectacular cities in my view, like the imperial capital. And I love walking tours. So there's a walking tour on darkest Victorian London that we'll go on, go to Borough Market. And go to the London Museum in the Docklands, which is a museum that's about the kind of commercial world of London in the 18th and 19th centuries, and a museum that I've worked with when I used to, I started my career working at the London School of Economics before I came to the University of Toronto. That was where I spent, 5 years as an assistant professor, and I did some work with London Docklands there. So we'll do that. Later, another part of something that I'm interested in and something that I try to emphasize in the course is that, we think about, and we think about this now, right? Like when you think about post-industrial or modern economics, we hardly ever think about land or farms or the countryside. But one of the things that I try to draw out in my own work as an historian, and one of the things that I try to draw out in the course is that, changing industrial conditions also mean changing agrarian conditions. And so, in the second part of the course, we'll go to the Cotswolds, which are right near this area of outstanding, they call it an ONB in the UK, outstanding natural beauty. Do a very kind of traditional British ramble, or which is what, just there, a walk, which just means hike. And go to Blenheim Palace, which is also near Oxford, which was the seat of the Duke of Marlborough, Winston Churchill's ancestor. And it's quite a spectacular example of kind of rural high life, I guess, is the best way to describe it. But we're also taking a day trip later in the course when we look more on specifically on industrial work. We'll go to Birmingham, a great city, the second city of Britain for a very long time. We'll go to the Black Country Living Museum, which if you've seen the Netflix show Peaky Blinders, a lot of Peaky Blinders is actually filmed in the Museum of the Black Country. And it's called the Museum of the Black Country because at the peak of its industrial era, on the peak of the industrial era, right, you could have a red brick building, but it would be so covered in soot and ash that it was called the Black Country, both because they dug coal there, but also because it was impossible to keep anything clean. And the Museum of the Black Country is an amazing site. And then finally, at the end of the course, we'll go to Cambridge, where I used to live when I commuted into England. And we'll take another walking tour on Cambridge and colonialism, which I think is a really good walking tour, and kind of get to see the sort of university town. So we go to, it's only a month. England's a small place. There's plenty of time for students to kind of explore on their own, but I've tried to offer something that kind of has like the metropolis, an industrial city, the countryside, and a university town.
So now switching a bit more to the academic side, what learning outcomes do you hope students will achieve by taking this course?
So this course is about trying to understand where modern employment came from. And I guess the course has an argument, which I'm persuaded by, but students don't necessarily have to be persuaded by to take or enjoy the course, which is that a lot of the features of the working environment that we live in now were built in the era of industrialization, right? This was an era of where more and more people, where the average working person in what was at the time the world's most sophisticated industrial economy, the average working person wasn't a farmer anymore, right? The average working person was a domestic servant or an industrial laborer or a shopkeeper or a street seller, right? And not all of those people had employers and in a kind of conventional employment relationship, but that I argue is where it came from. So one of the outcomes for the course is to try to be able to draw out. I hope that students, when they complete the course, will be able to recognize that the things that we consider to be natural in the working relationship or the employment relationship in 2024 are not natural and sort of fixed in time, but are the products of specific historical forces. And so the fact that we think about, one of the concepts that industrial relations scholars think about a lot is voice, right? The employee voice, right? How is it that, whether that's through union membership, whether that's through kind of opportunities to speak, right, within the context of an employment relationship that doesn't have a collective bargaining framework in place, right? All those things have a history. And we treat them as kind of part of the furniture, but I'm trying to show where they come from. And so that's the main kind of outcome of the course. So we'll also do some kind of basic historical work. This is not, I mean, this is a history course, but it's not in the history department. And so I don't expect students don't need to have any background in history at all to enjoy the course or thrive in it. But one of the things that we'll do is we'll do some of, and one of the kind of the structures of some of the assignments and some of the work we'll do is to sort of do some of the very basic kinds of intellectual operations that historians do. And so another kind of secondary learning outcome of the course is to introduce students to some of those basic historical techniques and to try to show them how those techniques can be useful, not only within the context of a history course, but within the context of kind of any analytical intellectual work.
And so last up, what advice would you give to students before participating in your summer abroad program?
So I think Oxford is both a place that is deeply connected to the past and visibly connected to the past. Like it is a remarkably, there's a lot of remarkable architecture. It's a very distinctive looking place, but it's also a real place. And so I think that students should understand, I think that part of what I'm hoping, what I hope they'll experience is to not just experience the study abroad as kind of like being within a sort of bubble of the university town or even a bubble of the program, but to understand that this is a place that's connected to the rest of the country, that's easily accessible, right? There's lots of places that students can go. It's not far to like the kind of, it's an opportunity to travel more within the UK, within Europe, right? So I hope that students will embrace that and recognize that the course itself is designed as a kind of introductory course to sort of interest students who are interested in industrial relations and human resources in the history of that discipline in a place that is itself steeped in history.
Well, that's wonderful. And thank you so much for sharing all your advice and just more information on the course. I'm sure students will watch back this video and get so many key takeaways. So I encourage all students to check out the IRE program on our website. And thank you again so much for your time.